Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. They conquered every death world, until they met Earth. The Galactic Conquering Force, or the GCF as we laughingly abbreviated it, because nothing says fear us like an acronym that sounds like you're clearing your throat, had a rather simple mission statement: find worlds, conquer worlds. Exploit resources. Repeat. Commander Vex Tor stood at the helm of our flagship. The inevitable triumph. If only our ship naming department had the gift of foresight. Vex was what you'd expect from the commander of an interstellar conquest armada, tall, imposing, with skin the color of cosmic radiation burns and a temper shorter than a neutron star's lifespan. Status report on the next target. He demanded, his 4 eyes blinking in that unsynchronized way that always made me want to reach over and manually coordinate them, but Lieutenant Coron Nexus valued my appendages too much for such foolishness. System designation Sol 3. Commander, I replied, trying to sound as professionally murderous as possible. The natives call it Earth, classified as, would you believe it, another death world. The bridge crew erupted in what we considered laughter, a series of high-pitched clicks and wheezes that sounded like malfunctioning life support. Systems death worlds were our specialty, our bread and butter, whatever other paired food metaphor you prefer. Death World number 27. Sub-Commander Zenith drawed from his station, his tentacles lazily manipulating the holographic display. At this point we should just rename ourselves Death World Exterminators and be done with it. Vex's mandibles clicked. In what might have been amusement specifications, I pulled up the data. Gravity 9.8 ms2, barely a workout for our troops. Atmosphere nitrogen-oxygen mix with traces of other gas is nothing our filters can't handle. Temperature ranges from 50 to Z to 50 to C depending on location. Radiation from their star is moderate. Notable hazards include large bodies of dihydrogen monoxide covering 71% of the surface, extreme weather phenomena, and active geological instability. Sounds positively boring. Vex yawned, all 7 rows of teeth gleaming under the bridge lights. What about the dominant species? Bipedal mammals, I reported, flicking through the preliminary scans. They call themselves humans, technologically advanced enough to have basic space flight within their system, nuclear capabilities, global communication networks. Nothing we halved rushed before resistance prediction. Vex asked, drumming his claws against the command console. I snorted, which with my respiratory system sounded like a small explosion. Standard death world pattern. Merciless efficiency as our hallmark. SUBC. Commander Zenith added, his voice like gravel in a food processor. Take Aquila 3, a water world with atmospheric pressure that would crush most species. He pointed to a display showing an oceanic planet. The Aquilan had evolved to withstand the pressure, breathe underwater, and even develop bioelectric defenses. How did we defeat thee? As a wide-eyed recruit, Zenith's mouthparts twisted into what passed for a smile. In our species we introduced an engineered virus that targeted their electric cells. No bioelectric discharge, no defense, no victory. They now farm algae for our protein synthesizers. I stepped forward, highlighting the next display. Terox Prime gravity 3 times what we're experiencing now. That Zion developed exoskeletons capable of supporting their massive weight, giving them incredible strength. I gestured to what looked like a section of armored plating mounted on the wall. 1 Terrian soldier could tear through a standard battle cruiser hull with these natural weapons, yet they fell. Vex interjected, unable to let anyone else hold the spotlight for more than 10 seconds. Yes, Commander, I continued, suppressing a sigh. We engineered targeted electromagnetic pulses that interfered with their neural connections to their exoskeletons, rendered them immobile. The conquest took 7 days. Vex strutted, and I do mean strutted, past several more displays. Atmospheric toxicity, extreme radiation, biological hazards. We've conquered worlds where acid rain is considered a refreshing drizzle, planets where the local flora shoots poisonous spores if you so much as sneeze near them. He stopped at the most recent addition, Draconist 7. The Draconians were perhaps our most formidable opponents, yet evolved to survive in a methane-rich environment. With frequent lightning storms, their bodies generated natural electrical fields for protection and Attack. He tapped the mounted object. It appeared to be a ceremonial mask made of a strange metallic substance. They lasted 3 weeks against our forces. Their final transmission begged for mercy. The recruits buzzed with excitement and bloodlust. This was why they joined the GCF. The glory, the conquest, the absolute certainty of victory. Remember, Vex concluded, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. Deathworlders are predictable. They develop remarkable adaptations to survive their hostile environments, which makes them feel invincible, but their specialization is their weakness. Find it, exploit it. Watch them fall. Little did we know that humans, those peculiar beads from Earth, had somehow missed the memo about specializing, and that would make all the difference. Do our first detailed scan of Earth left our science teams scratching their sensory appendages in confusion. I watched Chief Scientist Orion flux pace around the holographic display of the planet, muttering calculations under his breath. Problems, Chief? I asked, entering the science bay with a data pad clutched in my upper limbs. Lieutenant Nexus. Perfect timing. Orion's 6 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of intellectual agitation in our species. This planet is perplexing. I glanced at the rotating hologram. It looked unremarkable to me. Blue-green, white swirls of cloud cover. It's a standard class M planet, isn't it? Oh, it's Deathworld class. All right, Orion snorted, adjusting his lab coat with his secondary arms while his primaries manipulated the display controls. But look at these readings. The planet experiences everything. He expanded the display, showing a mosaic of Earth's surface, desert regions hot enough to cook our species alive, next to frozen wastelands that would shatter our exoskeletons, oceans deep enough to crush most vessels, mountains that pierce the troposphere, active volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, states diverse. I shrugged. Many planets have varied biomes. Not like this. Orion shook his head so violently I feared it might detach. Most death worlds have 1 or 2 major hazards. This planet has catalogued over 500 distinct natural disaster types, and the local species has settlements in every single biome. Now that was unusual. I peered closer at the data stream's adaptive architecture. Barely. Orion laughed to sound like someone choking on gravel. They live in paper-thin structures in tornado zones, wooden houses on fault lines, floating dwellings in hurricane paths. It's as if they're daring their planet to kill them. What about the humans themselves? Specialized adaptations? Or Orion brought up biological scans showing human anatomy from multiple angles. That's the truly bizarre part. They have almost no specialized adaptations, no armor, no venom, no enhanced senses, no natural weapons beyond some pathetically blunt teeth and nails. They're generalists. Generalists don't survive on death worlds, I stated flatly, reciting xenobiology basics. Exactly. Orion slammed all 4 hands on the console. Yet they've become the apex species. They can survive temporarily, at least in every environment on their planet, with minimal technological assistance. They routinely expose themselves to extreme conditions for recreation. He pulled up footage of humans swimming in freezing waters, climbing sheer rock faces without safety equipment, running across deserts, diving into ocean depths. Their physical resilience defies our models. Orion continued. They can survive losing limbs, significant blood volume, or even organs. Their bones knit back together after breaking. They intentionally damage their muscles to make them stronger. They can adapt to almost any diet and their reproduction rate. He shuddered dramatically. I felt a creeping unease in my thoracic cavity. Recommendation for invasion protocol. Orion hesitated. The first time I'd ever seen our arrogant chief scientist show doubt. Standard procedure should suffice, but maintain heightened alert status. These humans are unpredictable. If only we had realized then just how much of an understatement that was. Due first contact with humans went exactly as expected, which is to say completely not as expected. The GCF protocol for initial contact was straightforward: land in a remote area, capture some specimens for study, assess their reactions, then proceed to a display of overwhelming force. Fear was an efficient lubricant for conquest. We chose a location humans called Montana, a sparsely populated region with mountains, forests, and relatively few technological monitoring systems. The advanced team led by Captain Rex Pulsar deployed in a standard stealth shuttle. I monitored the operation from The inevitable triumph along with Commander Vex and the increasingly nervous Chief Scientist Orion team. Scythe reporting successful touchdown. Rex's voice crackled through the sea. No detection apparent. Beginning specimen collection. Engaging optical camouflage. For 20 minutes everything proceeded according to protocol. The team located an isolated dwelling, what humans called a cabin, and prepared to extract its occupants. 2 humans detected inside. Rex reported preparing stun field. That's when everything went sideways, toppled over and exploded spectacularly. Taking fire. Rex's voice suddenly blared through the cow. The humans have detected us somehow. Vex leaned forward and his command chair. Impossible. Our camouflage technology is undetectable to species at their level. Tell that to the projectiles bouncing off our shuttle. Rex shouted, the audio feed filled with sharp cracks and pings. They're using primitive chemical propellant weapons. How are they targeting us? Orion frantically examined the data stream. Thermal imaging. Their weapons have thermal scopes. They can see our heat signatures. That's actually quite clever, I muttered, earning a glare from Vex. Deploying stun field. Rex announced. There was a moment of silence, then stun field deployed. Targets neutralized. Proceeding with extraction. Collective relief spread through the bridge. Standard protocol. Back on track until 5 minutes later. Sir, the subjects are regaining consciousness. Already. Rex's voice had risen an octave. The stun field effectiveness is degrading rapidly. Impossible. Orion whispered, checking his instruments. The field should incapacitate them for at least 6 hours. Well, they're very much capacitated now, Rex shouted. And what are they doing? Are they pouring liquids on themselves? Explained Captain Vex. Demanded. They're dousing themselves with some bottle labeled hot sauce and snorting some white powder. Their metabolic readings are spiking drastically, heart rates increasing. The stun field is completely ineffective. I exchanged bewildered glances with Orion. Humans were deliberately ingesting stimulants to counteract our technology. They've rearmed. Taking cover. Request immediate. Rex's transmission cut off abruptly. E-Day report. Vex barked. Nothing but static answered. 301 minutes passed before we re-established contact. The team had been forced to retreat to their shuttle. 2 soldiers were wounded, not by the primitive projectile weapons but by something called a chainsaw that one of the humans had wielded with surprising effectiveness. These creatures are insane. Rex's report concluded they showed no fear. If anything, they became more aggressive after we revealed ourselves. The smaller one kept shouting something about finally having proof and tried to capture us. Commander Vex was not pleased. His mandibles clicked rapidly. A danger sign. I'd learned to recognize this. Changes nothing, he declared. Isolate incident. Anomalous subjects moved to Phase 2. Phase 2 involved a more direct approach of visible landing in a populated area followed by a formal demand for surrender. We chose a location called Central Park in a major population center known as New York City. 3 shuttles descended in broad daylight, deploying a contingent of our most intimidating troops equipped with spectacular weaponry. Commander Vex himself transmitted a booming message from orbit displayed on enormous holographic projectors. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Conquering Force. Your planet is now under our control. Resistance is futile. Surrender your governing authorities immediately. The expected response to such a display was panic, chaos, perhaps some futile military response followed by negotiations for surrender. Instead, we got cameras. Thousands of humans pointing small devices at our troops, broadcasting, commentating, taking selfies with our shuttles in the background. What are they doing? Vex demanded, watching the feeds in disbelief. They appear to be documenting the invasion, sir, I replied, equally confused. A human in a blue uniform approached the shuttle, looking utterly unimpressed. Hey, you guys got a permit for this? You can't just land in Central Park without a filming permit. Is this for a movie or something? Even more baffling, some humans were approaching our soldiers asking for autographs and whether they were promoting the new Marvel movie our troops trained to deal with terror and resistance had no protocol for handling enthusiasm and bureaucratic queries about permits. Sir, the ground commander reported the local authorities are demanding we pay a fee for unauthorized event staging, and something called the EPA is concerned about our shuttle emissions. Commander Vex Stocks went rigid with fury. Deploy warning measures. Show them our power. The troops fired energy weapons into the sky, creating a spectacular light show. The humans responded with applause and more cameras. Dude, the special effects are amazing. One human shouted, "Is this a 5D experience?" Back on the bridge, Orion was practically molting with stress. They don't understand, or they're in extreme denial. Our psychological warfare models predicted immediate recognition of superior force. I watched the chaos unfold, a creeping realization forming. "Sir," I said slowly, "I think the problem might be entertainment," explained Lieutenant Vex. Growled. "Their global information networks are saturated with fictional scenarios exactly like this alien invasions. They become desensitized. They think this is fake." Vex stare could have melted titanium. "Then we shall have to convince them otherwise, and that's when we made our first truly catastrophic mistake." Commander Vex's solution to the human perception problem was brutally simple: escalate, show undeniable force, make them understand that this was no entertainment production, target their military installations first. He ordered, face rigid with determination, then their power infrastructure. Standard conquest protocol. I watched from my station as our fleet deployed orbital strike vessels. The bridge hummed with anticipation. This was familiar territory. We'd crush 26 Deathworld species this way. Earth would be no different, or so we thought. The first plasma barrage targeted a military base in a region called Nevada. Our scanners showed significant technological activity there, suggesting it was a primary defense installation. The strikes hit with pinpoint accuracy, creating spectacular explosions visible from orbit. Direct hits confirmed. Tactical Officer Pulsar reported satisfaction evident in her voice, moving to secondary targets. Orion was monitoring human communications channels, his expression growing increasingly disturbed. "Sir, the humans are celebrating what Vex snapped. They're calling it the best special effects ever and viral marketing genius. Something called Twitter is exploding with praise for entities called Disney and Netflix." Vex slammed his command console. "Are they blind? We just vaporized a military in Asian about that, sir." Orion hesitated. "According to human broadcasts we hit something called Area 51, which appears to be both a military site and the focus of enormous conspiracy theories about aliens." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. We had inadvertently reinforced their disbelief by targeting the one military installation on their planet most associated with fictional alien narratives. "Continue with the power grid targets." Vex growled. "We knocked out power to 3 major cities." The humans responded with remarkable efficiency, rerouting power within hours, and still many believed it was an elaborate show, a government exercise, or a hacker attack. Their news channels debated who was responsible. None seriously considered actual aliens. Vex's patience never. His strong suit evaporated completely. "Deploy ground forces, full invasion protocols." We launched drop ships carrying bring our elite shock troops to 6 continental locations. Simultaneously, thousands of GCF soldiers armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy descended upon Earth. That's when we discovered just how unprepared we were for humans, sir. The panicked voice of Colonel Astor, commanding the North American Invasion Force, cut through the command channel. "The humans are using banned chemical weapons." "What?" Vex demanded. "They have chemical weapons capabilities. They're deploying something called pepper spray. It's penetrating our respiratory filters. Soldiers are incapacitated." Similar reports flooded in from all invasion fronts in the European theater. Civilians were fighting back with improvised weapons and tactics that made no strategic sense yet were somehow effective in what they called Russia. Locals were setting traps that our advanced sensors somehow failed to detect, sir. The Asian forces report humans are using primitive projectile weapons, but the ammunition is its adapting. They're watching which rounds penetrate our armor and switching to those types. I pulled up tactical displays, watching in disbelief as our carefully orchestrated invasion dissolved into chaos. This wasn't supposed to happen. Deathworlders fought hard, yes, but predictably they used their specialized evolutionary advantages in predictable ways humans were fighting with everything. The South American force is retreating. Someone shouted. The humans released venomous creatures Into our Camp African Division reports their vehicles have been disabled by children. They removed essential components while the troops were engaged elsewhere. Vex was livid. His XA skeleton flushing the deep purple of rage. How is this possible? They're primitives with minimal natural defenses. Orion was frantically analyzing the incoming data. Sir, they're not fighting his isolated group, they're sharing information. Globally successful tactics in one region are being rapidly adopted across the planet. That's impossible. Tactical Officer Pulsar objected. The communication lag alone. They're using something called TikTok and YouTube. Orion interrupted. Instructional videos on how to disable our tech are going viral. I watched a transmission from Australia where a teenage human was demonstrating how to short-circuit our force shields using common household chemicals and a device called a super soaker. Sir, I said quietly to Vex, I think we may need to reconsider our approach. Nonsense, he snapped. We've conquered death worlds before. Deploy the bio agents. This was our standard fallback. Tailored biological weapons designed to incapacitate a species without killing them, making conquest bloodless and resources intact. 3 hours after deployment, Orion delivered the devastating news: the bioagents are ineffective, he reported. Voice hollow with disbelief. Human immune systems are adapting and they've identified the delivery mechanism. They're wearing masks. Ask Vex exploded. Simple facial coverings cannot defeat military-grade bioagents. They apparently they can. I murmured, watching footage of humans and everything from sophisticated filtered masks to improvised bandanas continuing to fight. And Sir, Orion added, the calling them space germs and developing countermeasures. Their pharmaceutical companies are apparently in a race to produce treatments driven by something called profit motive. For the first time in GCF history we had to admit a horrifying truth: the initial invasion had failed. The command center of the inevitable triumph transformed into what humans might call a war room, though it more closely resembled a scientific conference. Melting down in real-time, view screens displayed ongoing skirmishes across Earth's surface. None were going well for our forces. Commander Vex had called an emergency strategy session which primarily consisted of him pacing furiously while the rest of us tried not to become the target of his rage. Explain, he demanded, looming over Chief Scientist Orion. How are these hairless primates defeating our elite forces? Orion nervously adjusted his data pad. Sir, we've been analyzing human behavior patterns and well, they're not following any of our predictive models. Obviously. Vex, as I decided to risk speaking up. Sir, if I may, I've been studying their historical records and there's something remarkable about humans. All eyes turned to me, some blinking with curiosity, others with skepticism. Every other death world species evolved specific adaptations to their planet's dangers. The Pyroian developed heat resistance. The Aquilon adapted to pressure. All specialized solutions to specific problems. I pulled up a series of human historical images on the main view screen. Humans did something different. They weren't the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armed species on their planet, so they became adaptable. The images showed humans in different environments across their history, crossing deserts, sailing oceans, scaling mountains, surviving in Arctic conditions, while other species on Earth develop specialized adaptations. Humans develop problem-solving capacity. They compensate for their biological limitations with technology, yes, but more importantly with behavioral flexibility. Tactical Officer Pulsar snorted. You make them sound like some kind of super species. They're just primitive mammals. Primitive mammals who just disabled 3 of our capital ships using something called fishing nets and boat propellers. I countered, highlighting a tactical report from Earth's Pacific Region. SUBC Commander Zenith, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke. The lieutenant has a point. We're seeing unprecedented adaptation speeds. Look at their response to our sonic weapons. He brought up footage from a battle in a place called Detroit. Our troops had deployed acoustic disruptors designed to incapacitate through overwhelming sensory input. The humans had initially fallen back, but within hours returned wearing, of all things, noise-canceling headphones repurposed from consumer electronics. They're using their own entertainment technology as military countermeasures, Zenith observed. Ingenious really. And look at this, I added, showing another video of humans in A desert region disabling our hover tanks. They observed that our vehicles generated heat signatures and electromagnetic fields, so they baited them into areas with naturally occurring mineral deposits that disrupted those fields. They're using their knowledge of their own planet against us. Orion nodded vigorously. That's not even the most concerning part. Humans appear to thrive under pressure. Their historical records show repeated instances of their most significant technological advancements occurring during periods of extreme crisis. They're literally innovating faster because we're attacking them. I concluded our invasion isn't crushing their spirit, it's accelerating their development. Commander Vex Stocks drooped slightly, the closest he'd ever come to showing defeat. So what you're saying is each day we fight them, I said grimly, they become more dangerous. Commander Vex was not accustomed to failure. 26 successful conquests had nurtured in him a certainty of victory that bordered on religious faith. So when faced with the first real possibility of defeat, he did what many cornered predators do. He became more dangerous. Prepare the Nova cannons, he ordered, his voice eerily calm. After days of rage the bridge fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the ship's engine seemed to quiet and shock. Sir Subc Commander Zenith ventured cautiously, the Nova cannons are planet killers. The High Command protocols specifically prohibit. I know what they are, Vex snapped, and I know the protocols, but we've never faced a species like this. If we can't have this world, no one will. His mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a sign of absolute determination in our species. I exchanged alarmed glances with Orion. This wasn't conquest anymore, this was extinction. The Nova cannon began their charging sequence, a deep thrumming vibration that resonated through the ship. 4 hours until they reached firing capacity. 4 hours until Earth became cosmic debris. I made a decision that would either make me a hero or a traitor, depending on who wrote the history. Commander, before we take such irreversible action, I request permission to attempt one final diplomatic contact. Vex stared at me, all 4 eyes unblinking. Diplom? Why now? Yes sir. I continued fighting to keep my voice steady. Our models for human behavior have been wrong at every turn. Perhaps our assumptions about their willingness to negotiate are equally flawed. What do you propose? Lieutenant Zenith asked, clearly hoping for any alternative to planetary destruction. Direct communication with their leaders. No threats, no displays of force, just talking. Vex laughed, a harsh grating sound. After all this you think they'll just chat with us? They're Deathworlders, Lieutenant. They'll fight to the last. Every other Deathworld species would. Yes, I agreed, but humans have shown themselves to be different. After what felt like an eternity, Vex waved a dismissive claw. You have 1 hour. Lieutenant. 1. Then the Nova cannons fire. I worked frantically with Orion to establish communication with Earth's governing bodies. To our surprise they responded almost immediately. In the main conference chamber a large view screen flickered to life, showing a diverse group of humans seated around a long table. They called themselves the United Nations Security Council. This is Lieutenant Cora Nexus of the Galactic Conquering Force. I began trying to project authority. Despite my growing doubts, I am authorized to discuss terms of. Let me stop you right there, interrupted one of the humans, a woman with close, cropped silver hair and piercing eyes. We're not interested in discussing our surrender. I blinked in confusion. I was actually going to propose a ceasefire. The humans exchanged glances. The silver-haired woman who introduced herself as Secretary General Maya Rivera leaned forward. Lieutenant, your forces have been attacking us for 2 weeks now. You've destroyed military installations, damaged infrastructure, and caused considerable disruption, yet you've deliberately avoided civilian population centers. You could have caused mass casualties, but didn't. This observation caught me off guard. She wasn't wrong. Vex strategies, for all their aggression, had followed the GCF protocols for minimal collateral damage. Protocols designed to preserve resource value, not out of moral consideration. We've been studying you as much as you've been studying us. Another human said, a man with dark skin and an accent. I couldn't place. Your technology is impressive, but your tactics suggest you've never encountered significant resistance before. I almost laughed at the understatement. You've been unexpectedly resilient. Here's what we propose. Secretary Rivera continued, not surrender alliance. The word hung in the air like a plasma charge ready to detonate. Alliance. The GCF didn't form alliances. We Conquered, what could you possibly offer the Kfi? Asked, genuinely curious. Adaptability of third human answered simply, you've seen what we can do under pressure, how quickly we innovate. Imagine what we could accomplish as partners rather than enemies. While they spoke, Orion quietly passed me a data pad showing in alarming development. Humans had somehow managed to hack into our fleet's secondary systems. They weren't attacking, they were just demonstrating they could. I thought about the Nova cannons charging on Vex. Orders about 26 conquered worlds, about a commander who couldn't accept failure. There's something you should know, I said, making another potentially treasonous decision. Commander Vex has activated our planet killer weapons. They'll fire in approximately 3 hours instead of panic. The humans showed grim determination. Rivera nodded to someone off-screen. Then we should move quickly. We've already infiltrated your fleet's communication systems. We can broadcast a message directly to your high command. Bypassing Commander Vex entirely. My jaw literally dropped. You what? As we said, Lieutenant, we've been studying you and we found some very interesting articles in your military code about unlawful extinction events and chain of command protocols. For the first time since arriving at Earth, I felt something unexpected. Hope, what exactly are you proposing? I asked. Secretary Rivera smiled, not the smile of someone facing annihilation, but the confident expression of someone holding a winning hand. The mutiny, Lieutenant, but one that saves 2 civilizations instead of destroying them. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of action that would have made even the most chaotic human action films seem tame by comparison. With the help of Earth's leaders, we transmitted evidence of Vex planet killer activation directly to GCF High Command, a clear violation of Protocol 37.6 regarding extinct level weapons. The response was swift. Vex was relieved of command, and I improbably was appointed acting commander until a proper replacement could arrive. Vex did not accept this development gracefully. He barricaded himself on the bridge with loyal officers threatening to fire the Nova cannons. Manually, it took a joint operation, human hackers disabling key systems from Earth, while a team led by Sub-Commander Zenith stormed the bridge to finally end his command. 5 standard rotations later, I stood in the newly repurposed gallery of cooperation aboard the renamed starship Inevitable Progress, facing a delegation of human representatives. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Where Vex had displayed trophies of conquest, we now hosted diplomatic receptions. The treaty has been ratified by both the GCF High Command and Earth's United Nations, I announced, hardly believing the words myself. For the first time in our history, the GCF welcomes an unconquered world into partnership. Secretary Riva, now Earth's official ambassador to the galactic community, stepped forward. We look forward to a fruitful exchange of knowledge, technology and culture and military tactics, added General Marcus Chen with a smile that somehow managed to be both friendly and slightly terrifying. The reception that followed was distinctly human in its organized chaos. Loud music, laughter, food and drinks of questionable safety for various species, and spontaneous discussions breaking out between human scientists and AR xenobiologists. Chief Scientist Orion approached me looking slightly dazed after a lengthy conversation with 3 human researchers. Lieutenant, sorry Commander, they have the most extraordinary theoretical approaches to physics. Completely unorthodox, but they work. That seems to be their specialty, I replied. Unorthodox approaches that work. Later I found myself standing with Rivera at a viewport looking down at Earth. Beautiful, terrifying, magnificent Earth. You know, she said thoughtfully, we were always certain we weren't alone in the universe. We just expected first contact to be more peaceful. I clicked my mandibles in amusement. And we always expected conquest to be more conquest. She laughed. A pleasant sound. I was coming to appreciate your Commander. Vex made a fundamental error in judgment. He saw our adaptability as weakness. Jack of all trades, master of none. But that's not quite right, is it? I used the full saying, which we shortened over time, is Jack of all trades, master of none, is oftentimes better than master of one. She gazed at her home planet. Specialization creates vulnerability, adaptability creates resilience. I thought about the 26 conquered worlds, each with species that had evolved perfect adaptations to specific threats only to be undone when facing something new. The GCF has much to learn from humans, I admitted, and we have much to learn from you, Rivera replied diplomatically, but we both knew the truth that would soon reshape galactic politics in the cosmic game of survival. Earth's scrappy, stubborn, innovative humans had discovered the ultimate evolutionary strategy: not to become the perfect specialist but to become the ultimate generalist, not to master their environment but to master change itself. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would we as the newly appointed historian of human GCF relations. I can now say with certainty we conquered every death world until we met Earth. Here, and Earth conquered us not with weapons but with possibilities.